Taman stood at the massive viewing window of the transport ship and watched the Galactic Military Academy grow larger in the distance. The space station looked like a giant metal city floating among the stars with thousands of lights blinking. Across its surface and ships coming and going like busy insects around a hive, he had dreamed of this moment for months, but now that it was here he felt small and uncertain about what waited ahead. The other passengers on the transport were mostly aliens from different worlds, and they all looked confident and proud while Taemin and the 11 other humans sat quietly in their corner. The aliens had scales or fur or strange glowing eyes, and some were twice as tall as humans, while others looked like walking insects. They spoke in languages that sounded like music or grinding metal, and when they looked at the humans, their expressions seemed to say that humans did not belong here. When the transport docked at the academy, Taemin grabbed his single bag and followed the crowd through the airlock into a corridor that stretched so far he could not see the end. The walls were covered with symbols and writings from 100 different worlds, and the ceiling was so high it disappeared into shadows above them. Robots floated through the air carrying messages and supplies, while holographic displays showed news from across the galaxy. A tall, blue-skinned alien in a military uniform stepped forward, and his voice boomed through a translator device. He said his name was Instructor Velthar, and he was from the Valorian Empire, which had ruled space for over 3,000 years. His eyes were like silver mirrors, and when he looked at the humans, his mouth curved in what might have been a smile, but looked more like a sneer. Velthar explained that the Academy trained the best military minds from every civilized world, and that only the strongest and smartest beings in the galaxy were accepted here. He said the humans were here as part of a special program to help primitive species learn basic military concepts, and that they should be grateful for this opportunity, even though they would probably fail. The other alien cadets laughed when they heard this, and Taemin felt his face grow hot with embarrassment, but he kept his mouth shut and followed Velthar through the corridors to their dormitory section. The human quarters were smaller than the others and located in what seemed to be the oldest part of the station, where the walls had scratches and the air recyclers made strange noises. Taemin's roommate was Do-hyun, a quiet young man from Busan who spoke softly and always seemed to be thinking about something important. In the room next door were Hai-Ri, who had short black hair and moved like a fighter, and Chan-Woo, who wore thick glasses and carried a bag full of electronic devices that he had built himself. During their first meal in the academy cafeteria, Taemin met the other human cadets, including Da-eun, who was studying intelligence work and seemed to notice everything that happened around her. The alien cadets sat at different tables and spoke loudly about their homeworlds and their families' military achievements, while the humans ate their strange-tasting food in silence. The next morning, Velthar led them to the simulation center, which was a vast room filled with pods that looked like metal eggs. Each pod contained a chair surrounded by screens and controls that could create any kind of battle scenario imaginable. Velthar explained that the humans would start with basic training simulations, while the more advanced alien cadets worked on complex military problems. Taemin climbed into his pod and the screens came alive, showing the view from a small spaceship flying through an asteroid field. The computer voice told him that enemy pirates had attacked a convoy of cargo ships, and he needed to rescue the survivors. It seemed simple enough, but when the first enemy ship appeared and started shooting, Taemin felt his heart race as he grabbed the controls. The simulation felt incredibly real, with alarms blaring and explosions lighting up the darkness of space. Taemin twisted his ship between the floating rocks, while enemy fighters chased him and shot beams of energy that barely missed his hull. He found the cargo ships hiding behind a large asteroid, but they were surrounded by 6 pirate vessels that were much bigger and more powerful than his little fighter. Something inside Taemin's mind clicked into place, and suddenly he could see the whole battle like a 3-dimensional puzzle. He noticed that the pirates were positioned to protect each other, but that also meant they could not move quickly. He dove his ship straight down below the asteroid field and came up behind the enemies where they did not expect him. Using the cargo ship's own engines as shields, Taemin lured the pirates into chasing him through a narrow canyon between 2 asteroids. The enemy ships were too big to maneuver well in the tight space, and they crashed into each other while Taemin's smaller fighter danced around them like a fish swimming through coral. When the simulation ended, all the cargo ships were safe, and all the pirates were destroyed. Velthar stared at the results on his screen, and checked them 3 times before he believed what he was seeing. The scenario Taemin had just completed was based on a real pirate attack that had happened 50 years ago, and the original rescue mission had failed with heavy losses. No cadet had ever solved it completely, and most experienced pilots could only save half the cargo ships at best. But Velthar told himself that it must have been luck or a computer error because humans were supposed to be primitive and slow. He reset the system and gave Taemin another simulation which was even more difficult. This time, Taemin had to defend a space station against attacking enemy cruisers while coordinating with allied fighters and managing limited ammunition. Again, Taemin succeeded in ways that seemed impossible. He used the gravity of nearby planets to slingshot his fighters around enemy ships and attack from unexpected angles. He turned the space station's mining equipment into weapons and used electromagnetic pulses from solar flares to blind enemy sensors. When the battle ended, the space station was not only safe, but the entire enemy fleet had been captured or destroyed. In the pod next to him, Hyri was flying through a simulation where she had to escort transport ships through a dangerous nebula. Filled with space mines and hostile aliens, she piloted her fighter like it was part of her own body and found safe paths through the minefield that the computer said should not exist. She saved every single transport and destroyed an enemy ambush that was waiting at the exit. Do-hyun worked on a tactical simulation where he commanded an entire battle fleet against superior numbers. He studied the enemy formations for only a few minutes before he found weaknesses that military strategists had missed for decades. He split his forces in ways that should have been suicide, but instead led to complete victory with minimal losses. Chan Wu faced a technical challenge where enemy hackers were trying to shut down his ship's computer systems while he flew through a storm of space debris. He rewrote the ship's programming in real time and turned the enemy's own virus against them while flying blind through the debris field using only basic instruments. When the simulation session ended, Velthar gathered all the results and stared at them in disbelief. Every human cadet had achieved perfect scores on scenarios that were designed to be unsolvable. They had found solutions that experienced alien officers could not discover, and they had done it on their first day of training. The alien cadets crowded around the screens to see the human results, and their confident expressions turned to confusion and anger. Kethval, who was the son of a famous Valorian general, demanded to know why the humans were being given easy scenarios, while the aliens struggled with standard tests. He said it was unfair that primitive beings were getting special treatment. But Velthar knew the truth was much stranger than that. The scenarios the humans had completed were not easy at all. They were some of the most difficult simulations in the Academy's database, and many of them were based on real battles that had been studied for generations without finding perfect solutions. That night, Taemin and his friends sat in their dormitory talking about their first day. They thought the simulations had been fun but challenging, and they were proud that they had done well. They had no idea that they had just solved military problems that had puzzled the greatest strategic minds in the galaxy. Dae-yun mentioned that she had noticed some strange data feeds during her intelligence training, but she assumed they were just part of the learning process. Chan-woo said the computer systems seemed more advanced than anything he had seen on Earth, but he was excited to learn how they worked. None of them realized that their training simulations were actually historical battle records that the Academy used to teach advanced students about famous victories and defeats throughout galactic history. They did not know that their solutions were being automatically recorded and transmitted to military strategists across the galaxy, who were studying human tactical methods with growing amazement as Taemin lay in his narrow bunk that night and listened to the strange sounds of the alien space station around him. He thought about home and wondered if he was really smart enough to succeed in this place. He had no way of knowing that in just a few weeks his name would be known to military commanders throughout the galaxy as the human who had solved the legendary siege of Arcturus Prime on his 3rd day of training. 3 weeks had passed since the humans arrived at the Academy, and every day brought new, impossible victories that left the alien instructors scratching their heads in confusion. Taemin and his squad had completed over 30 advanced simulations and achieved perfect results on every single one, while the alien cadets struggled with basic training exercises that seemed simple by comparison. Hyri had become famous among the flight instructors for her ability to pilot fighters through asteroid fields in ways that violated every known law of physics and common sense. During one simulation, she flew her ship through a meteor storm while chasing enemy bombers and somehow managed to use the flying rocks as stepping stones to launch her fighter higher and faster than its engines should have allowed. The alien flight. Instructor Zixpara watched the replay footage for hours, trying to understand how Hayri had managed to ricochet her ship off 3 different asteroids in sequence, while firing her weapons and maintaining perfect course control. The mathematics said it was impossible, but the simulation results showed that she had not only succeeded, but had done it while protecting a convoy of civilian ships from enemy attack. Du Hyun spent his days in the tactical center, working on scenarios that were designed to test the strategic thinking of senior military officers with decades of experience. He would study the holographic battle displays for a few minutes, while alien instructors explained the complex political and military factors involved, and then he would quietly suggest troop movements that turned certain defeat into stunning. Victory. One particular simulation had been based on the Battle of the Spiral Gates, which happened 200 years ago when a small defensive force tried to stop a massive invasion fleet from reaching the core worlds. The greatest military minds of 5 different species had studied this battle for generations and concluded that the defenders could not possibly have won. Yet Do Hyun found a solution in less than an hour. He suggested using the defending ships' life support systems as improvised electromagnetic pulse weapons and coordinating the timing with solar flare activity to blind the enemy sensors at exactly the right moment. When the simulation ran with his modifications, the small defensive force not only stopped the invasion, but captured most of the enemy fleet intact. Chan-woo had earned a reputation among the technical instructors as either a genius or a dangerous lunatic because his solutions to engineering problems involved connecting systems in ways that should have caused catastrophic explosions, but somehow worked perfectly. During one simulation, his ship's main computer was destroyed by enemy fire, and he rebuilt the navigation system using spare parts from the coffee maker and the bathroom ventilation fan. The alien engineers who reviewed his work found circuits that they had never seen before and programming code that broke at least 12 fundamental rules of computer science, but achieved results that were more efficient than systems designed by the greatest technical minds in the galaxy. They spent hours trying to figure out how coffee maker components could possibly interface with hyperspace navigation computers. Even Da-Yun, who was supposed to be learning basic intelligence gathering techniques, was achieving results that amazed her instructors. She could look at enemy troop movements and supply reports, and somehow predict exactly when and where attacks would happen, even though the data seemed random and meaningless to everyone else. During one exercise, she was given intelligence reports from a conflict that had happened 30 years ago and asked to analyze them for training purposes. Within 2 hours, she had identified the exact location of the enemy's secret command center and predicted the timing of 3 surprise attacks that had caught the original intelligence analysts completely off guard. Instructor Velthar found himself checking and rechecking the simulation parameters every day because he could not believe that primitive humans were consistently outperforming cadets from the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. He ran diagnostic tests on the computers and even brought in technical specialists to examine the simulation pods for hidden modifications that might be helping the humans cheat. But every test confirmed that the simulations were running normally, and the humans were achieving their impossible results through pure skill and intuition that seemed to come from nowhere. Velthar had spent his entire career believing that military excellence came from superior technology, advanced training, and centuries of accumulated wisdom. Yet these young humans were proving him wrong every single day. The alien cadets were becoming increasingly angry and frustrated as they watched the humans receive more and more advanced simulation scenarios while they remained stuck on basic exercises. Kethval complained to his father, who was a high-ranking Valorian general, and demanded an investigation into why humans were receiving special treatment. But when General Kethmore reviewed the simulation records, he was shocked to discover that the humans were not receiving easy scenarios at all. They were being tested on some of the most difficult tactical problems in military history and solving them with creative approaches that his own strategic advisors had never considered. The Academy's central computer system, Area 7, had been automatically scaling the difficulty of human training scenarios based on their performance, and it was now feeding them battle data from conflicts that were classified as unsolvable by the Galactic Military Institute. These were scenarios that were used to teach advanced students about the limits of tactical thinking and the importance of accepting defeat gracefully. Yet the humans kept winning in ways that redefined what victory looked like. Tae-min had solved the Phantom Fleet engagement by using quantum interference patterns to turn enemy stealth ships against each other, and Hai-Ri had broken the siege of Delta Station by flying her fighter through a black hole's event horizon and emerging on the other side to attack the enemy from an impossible angle. Chan-woo had ended the robot rebellion of Kepler-9 by reprogramming the enemy artificial intelligence to fall in love with a washing machine, and Da-Yoon had prevented the Third Galactic War by predicting that the enemy emperor would choke on his dinner and sending medical supplies instead of military reinforcements. Every solution was completely insane by conventional military standards, but every solution worked perfectly when tested in simulation. The human tactical approaches were being quietly distributed to active military units across the galaxy, where desperate commanders were using them to win battles that should have been lost. Commander Kixmoth, who served as the Academy's chief administrator, had begun a secret investigation into the human performance anomalies because the implications were staggering. If these results were accurate, then everything the galactic military establishment believed about warfare strategy and species capability was fundamentally wrong. Kixmoth was an ancient cephalopod whose species had been studying military science for over 5,000 years, and he had personally witnessed the rise and fall of 6 different galactic empires. He understood that military superiority came from discipline, technology, and experience. Yet the humans possessed none of these advantages and still achieved impossible victories. During his investigation, Kixmoth discovered that human tactical solutions were already being implemented by military forces across 3 different star systems with remarkable success. The defense of mining station Omega-7 had been saved by using Taemin's gravitational slingshot maneuver, and the liberation of the captured colony on Xerion 4 had succeeded using Hai-Ri's atmospheric skip bombing technique. The most disturbing discovery was that many of the scenarios the humans were solving as training exercises were not historical battles at all, but were real conflicts that were happening right now. The Academy's simulation system was connected to the Galactic Intelligence Network and was automatically generating scenarios based on current military situations. This meant that when Do-hyun solved the defense of Outpost Bravo last Tuesday, he was not completing a training exercise, but was actually developing tactical solutions for a real battle that was being fought at that very moment on the edge of Valorian space. His strategy had been transmitted to the defending forces and had saved the lives of over 10,000 soldiers. The humans had no idea that their simulation victories were having real consequences across the galaxy. They thought they were playing elaborate video games and competing with each other for high scores, while alien instructors watched them solve military problems that had puzzled the greatest strategic minds for generations. Tae-min noticed that the scenarios were becoming more complex and interesting each week, but he assumed this was normal progression in military training. He enjoyed the challenges and took pride in finding creative solutions that his instructors seemed to appreciate, even though they always looked surprised when he succeeded. What he did not know was that his latest simulation victory had prevented a civil war in the Andromeda system by predicting that both sides would run out of ammunition on the same day and suggesting that they settle their differences with a cooking contest instead of a final battle. His recommendation had been forwarded to the diplomatic corps and had actually been implemented with remarkable success. As the weeks passed, the gap between human performance and alien achievement continued to grow wider. Administrator Kixmoth floated in his private office, surrounded by holographic displays showing impossible data that challenged everything he thought he knew about military science and the nature of intelligence itself. For the past month, he had been conducting a secret investigation into the human performance anomalies, and every piece of evidence he discovered made the mystery deeper and more disturbing. The ancient cephalopod had lived through 5 galactic wars and had personally trained over 10,000 military officers from dozens of different species, but he had never seen anything like what the humans were accomplishing. Their tactical solutions were being studied by war colleges across the galaxy and implemented by active military units with unprecedented success. Kixmoth's investigation had revealed that the Academy's central computer, Aria-7, had been automatically feeding real-time battle data to the human simulation pods without anyone realizing what was happening. The system had been designed to scale training difficulty based on student performance, but it had never encountered beings who consistently achieved perfect scores on impossible scenarios. as the humans succeeded at increasingly difficult challenges. Area 7 had begun accessing classified military databases and feeding them current intelligence reports from active combat zones. What the humans believed were historical training exercises were actually developing tactical solutions for battles that were being fought at that very moment across the galaxy. The most shocking discovery was a classified report from General Valorix, himself confirming that human tactical innovations had already saved over 50,000 lives and prevented the fall of 3 different star systems. Military commanders who had been facing certain defeat were now achieving stunning victories by implementing strategies that seemed to come from nowhere. Kixmoth had also discovered encrypted communications between high-ranking military officials, discussing the human phenomenon and debating whether to recruit more humans for strategic positions or to classify their abilities as a military secret that could provide advantages over potential enemies. But the investigation took an unexpected turn when Dayun approached Kixmoth with information that she had not supposed to have access to. The young human woman had been working on intelligence training exercises when she noticed unusual data patterns in the Academy's communication networks. Dayun explained that during her routine training she had discovered encrypted data streams that appeared to be transmitting simulation results directly to military command centers across the galaxy. She had also found evidence that many of the scenarios the humans were completing were based on real-time intelligence reports rather than historical battles. What concerned Dayun most was that she had recognized some of the tactical situations from news reports she had seen before coming to the Academy. The defensive mining station Omega-7 that Taman had solved last week was actually a real battle that had been reported in the galactic news feeds, and the victory had been achieved using exactly the same strategy that Taman had developed. In simulation, Kixmoth realized that Dayun's intelligence training was more advanced than anyone had suspected, and that her ability to analyze complex data patterns was already superior to many professional analysts with years of experience. He decided to share some of his investigation findings with her and was amazed by her ability to connect pieces of information that he had missed. Together they discovered that the human simulation results were being automatically transmitted to something called the Strategic Innovation Department, which was a classified military research unit that studied unconventional warfare techniques. This department was then distributing human tactical solutions to field commanders without revealing their source. Dayun also found evidence that several recent military victories that had been attributed to brilliant commanding officers were actually achieved using strategies that had been developed by her fellow human cadets in what they believed were training simulations. The heroes of the Battle of Zarian's Edge had used Chan Wu's electromagnetic pulse technique, and the defenders of the Spiral Nebula had implemented Hyree's atmospheric diving maneuver. The investigation revealed that Area 7 had been learning from human tactical approaches and was now generating new scenarios that combined elements from different historical battles with current intelligence data. The computer was essentially using the humans as a strategic thinking engine to solve military problems that conventional analysis could not address. Kixmoth began to suspect that the humans were not really cadets at all, but were experienced military personnel who had somehow been misclassified during the application process. Their tactical knowledge and combat instincts were far too advanced for beings who were supposed to be learning basic military concepts. When he reviewed their application files more carefully, he found inconsistencies that had been overlooked during the initial screening process. Taman's application mentioned evacuation coordination experience, but this had been interpreted as civilian emergency training rather than military experience. Hyree's background included atmospheric flight certification, which had been categorized as commercial piloting rather than combat training. Du Hyun's application referenced strategic planning consultation, which had been classified as academic work rather than military service, and Chan Wu's file mentioned emergency system maintenance, which had been assumed to be civilian technical work rather than battlefield engineering. Dayun's background was the most suspicious because her application included references to cross-cultural communication and information analysis, which could easily be interpreted as intelligence work rather than academic study. But all of these applications had been processed by automated systems that classified Earth as a primitive world whose inhabitants could not possibly have advanced military experience. The investigation team expanded when Instructor Velthar reluctantly admitted that he needed help understanding what was happening with the human cadets. His pride had been shattered by their consistent success, and he was beginning to question fundamental assumptions about military hierarchy and species capability. Velthar brought troubling information to the investigation. He had discovered that several alien cadets were requesting transfers to other academies because they felt inadequate compared to the human performance. The psychological impact of seeing primitive beings consistently outperform members of advanced civilizations was causing serious morale problems. More disturbing was Velthar's report that some alien military families were beginning to question whether their species' approach to warfare was fundamentally flawed. If humans who had only achieved spaceflight 50 years ago could outperform Valorians who had been perfecting military science for millennia, then perhaps everything they believed about tactical superiority was wrong. The investigation also revealed that news of human tactical innovations was spreading beyond military circles and was beginning to influence political and economic decisions across the galaxy. Several planetary governments had requested human advisors for defense planning, and there were rumors that some species were considering forming alliance with Earth based entirely on military potential. Kixmoth realized that the implications extended far beyond the Academy because the humans were inadvertently demonstrating that tactical excellence did not require advanced technology or centuries of military tradition. Their success suggested that the entire galactic power structure might be based on incorrect assumptions about the relationship between civilization level and combat effectiveness. The most disturbing discovery came when Dayun found classified communications indicating that some military leaders were already discussing the possibility of recruiting humans for special operations units that would be kept secret from the general galactic population. There was concern that widespread knowledge of human capabilities could destabilize existing military alliances. As the investigation continued, Kixmoth began to notice changes in the behavior of the human cadets themselves. They were becoming more confident and were starting to ask questions about why their simulation scenarios seemed so realistic and why their instructors always looked surprised by their success. Taemin had mentioned that some of the tactical situations reminded him of news reports he had seen, and Hyri had commented that the physics modeling in the simulations was more accurate than anything she had experienced in civilian flight training. Chan Wu had started asking technical questions about the simulation computers that demonstrated knowledge of advanced systems that he should not have encountered. The investigation reached a critical point when Da-Un discovered that Area 7 had been automatically upgrading the classification level of human training scenarios, and that they were now working on problems that were considered classified military secrets. The humans had unknowingly gained access to strategic information that was normally restricted to senior officers with decades of security. Clearance, Kixmoth faced a dilemma because he could not continue the investigation without revealing the truth to the humans, but he was not authorized to disclose classified information to beings who were officially categorized as primitive species cadets. At the same time, he could not ignore the evidence that these cadets. The moment that changed everything happened on a Tuesday morning during what should have been a routine simulation debriefing session. Taemin sat in the briefing room with his squad watching the holographic replay of their latest tactical exercise, while Instructor Velthar and Administrator Kixmoth analyzed their performance with expressions of barely controlled amazement. The simulation had been based on a desperate evacuation scenario where civilian transports needed to escape from a dying colony world while under heavy enemy fire. Taemin had coordinated the entire operation using a complex series of gravitational assists and decoy maneuvers that had saved every single transport ship, while completely confusing the attacking forces as the replay showed his fighter weaving between enemy cruisers and using stellar debris as cover. Taemin watched with casual interest and made an offhand comment that he did not realize would shatter the careful illusion that everyone had been maintaining for months. That maneuver reminded me of something I did during the Exodus, Taemin said quietly while pointing at the tactical display where his simulated fighter had just executed a seemingly impossible turn around a collapsing space station. The room fell into complete silence, as if all the air had been sucked out through the ventilation system. Velthar stopped in the middle of his analysis and stared at Taemin with an expression of shock, while Kixmoth's tentacles curled into tight spirals that indicated extreme agitation. Dayun felt her stomach drop as she realized what Taemin had just revealed, because she knew exactly what the Exodus was. It had been a real evacuation operation that had taken place 2 years ago when the colony world of New Busan was destroyed by volcanic activity and 30,000 civilians had needed emergency evacuation under enemy fire. "What did you just say?" Velthar demanded in a voice that was barely above a whisper. Taemin looked around the room and saw the shocked faces of his instructors and the worried expressions of his fellow humans, and realized that he had made a terrible mistake. He had assumed that everyone knew about his previous military experience, but now he understood that his application had been processed incorrectly. "I was there during the Exodus evacuation," Taemin said slowly, as he tried to figure out how much trouble he was in. "I was working as a civilian cargo pilot, but when the regular military transports were destroyed, I volunteered to help coordinate the emergency evacuation." Kixmoth activated a holographic recorder and asked Taemin to explain exactly what had happened during the Exodus operation. As Taemin described the real battle that had taken place 2 years ago, it became clear that the simulation he had just completed was not based on historical data, but was an exact recreation of events that he had personally experienced. The tactical solution that had amazed military strategists across the galaxy was not the result of brilliant analysis or creative thinking, but was simply Taemin remembering what he had actually done when faced with an impossible situation, and 30,000 lives depending on his decisions. Velthar checked the simulation database and confirmed that the Exodus scenario was classified as an unsolvable tactical problem that was used to teach advanced students about accepting defeat gracefully. No military academy in the galaxy had ever recorded a successful completion of this exercise. Yet Taemin had achieved perfect results because he was not solving a problem, but was recreating his own actions. The revelation broke open like a dam, bursting as the other humans realized they could no longer maintain the pretense that they were inexperienced cadets. Hayri admitted that she had been a resistance fighter on 3 different occupied worlds and had flown combat missions against enemy forces that had superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Du-hyun revealed that he had served as a strategic consultant for the United Earth Defense Force and had coordinated defensive operations for entire star systems during the border conflicts with the Zirion Empire. His tactical knowledge came from years of planning real battles where millions of lives hung in the balance. Chan Wu confessed that he was not just a technical student, but was actually a battlefield engineer who had spent 2 years jury-rigging damaged systems and building improvised weapons for human forces that were constantly outgunned and outnumbered by alien technology. Dae-Yoon's revelation was the most shocking, because she admitted that she was not a student at all, but was an active intelligence operative for Earth's Strategic Information Division, who had been sent to the Academy to assess alien military capabilities and gather information about galactic defense systems. As each human revealed their true background, the scope of the deception became clear. None of them were really cadets in the traditional sense, but were experienced military personnel who had applied to the Academy seeking formal education in galactic military doctrine and advanced tactical theory. Their applications had been processed by automated systems that classified all humans as primitive beings who could not possibly have advanced military experience. The Academy's admission computers had interpreted their backgrounds as civilian work rather than recognizing their actual military service. Taemin explained that he had applied to the Academy because human forces were constantly facing alien technology that they did not understand, and he wanted to learn conventional galactic military tactics so he could better protect human colonies from future attacks. Hayri had come to the Academy hoping to study alien fighter design and propulsion systems, so she could help human engineers develop better defensive aircraft. Do-hyun wanted to understand how advanced civilizations coordinated multi-planet defensive strategies, and Chan Wu was trying to learn about alien computer systems and weapons technology. Dae-Yoon's mission was more complex because she had been sent to evaluate whether the Galactic Military Academy could provide useful training for human forces, or whether Earth needed to develop completely independent military doctrine. The room was quiet for several minutes as Velthar and Kixmoth tried to process the implications of what they had just learned. The humans who had been solving impossible tactical problems were not brilliant students, but were experienced warriors who had been fighting and winning battles across the galaxy for years. Kixmoth activated his communication system and called an emergency meeting with the Academy's senior staff because the situation had implications that extended far beyond simple misclassification of student applications. The humans had inadvertently revealed that Earth's military capabilities were far more advanced than anyone in the galactic community had realized. During the emergency meeting that followed the revelation, Velthar presented evidence that human tactical innovations had already been implemented by military forces across 12 different star systems with unprecedented success. What had seemed like creative solutions to training problems were actually proven battlefield techniques that had been developed through years of real combat experience. The Academy's database showed that human forces had been engaged in conflicts across the galaxy for the past 5 years and had achieved victory rates that defied conventional military analysis. They had defeated enemies with superior technology and larger numbers by using tactical approaches that other species had never considered. General Kethmore, who participated in the meeting via holographic communication, expressed shock at learning that the primitive species his son had been complaining about were actually experienced military veterans whose tactical knowledge was being studied by his own strategic planning department. The revelation forced a complete reevaluation of Earth's position in the galactic community because the humans had demonstrated military capabilities that rivaled or exceeded those of species that had been perfecting warfare for thousands of years. Their success suggested that human approaches to combat were fundamentally different and potentially superior to traditional galactic military doctrine. Kixmoth realized that the Academy had been inadvertently conducting the most comprehensive analysis of human military capabilities in galactic history, and that the results challenged every assumption about the relationship between technological advancement and tactical effectiveness. The humans had achieved their impossible victories, not through superior equipment or advanced training, but through approaches to problem-solving that emphasized adaptability, creativity, and the willingness to attempt solutions that conventional military wisdom considered impossible. As the meeting continued, it became clear that the revelation had implications beyond military strategy, because the humans had demonstrated that tactical excellence could emerge from different evolutionary and cultural backgrounds in ways that the galactic community had never anticipated. The Academy faced a choice between continuing to treat the humans as students who needed to learn conventional military doctrine or recognizing them as instructors whose tactical innovations could revolutionize galactic warfare. But either choice would require acknowledging that fundamental assumptions about species capability and military hierarchy had been completely wrong. The transformation of the Galactic Military Academy began immediately after the revelation, as administrators and instructors struggled to understand the implications of what they had discovered about human military capabilities. Kixmoth called an emergency session of the Academy Council, where representatives from 12 different species gathered to discuss how to respond to the complete overthrow of their understanding about warfare and tactical thinking. Instructor Velthar found himself in the strange position of requesting permission to learn from the beings he had been assigned to teach. His pride had been replaced by curiosity as he realized that human tactical approaches represented a completely different way of understanding combat that his own species had never developed despite 3,000 years of military advancement. Academy Council faced an unprecedented situation because the humans had inadvertently demonstrated that military excellence could emerge from cultural and evolutionary backgrounds that bore no resemblance to traditional galactic military development. Their success challenged fundamental assumptions about the relationship between technological advancement and tactical superiority. General Kethmore attended the council session via holographic communication and presented a classified report showing that human tactical innovations had already been implemented by Valorian forces with remarkable success. The defense of Kepler Station had been saved using Taemin's gravitational assist maneuver, and the liberation of the mining colonies had succeeded through implementation of Hay-Ree's atmospheric diving technique. The report revealed that human approaches to warfare emphasized improvisation under pressure, emotional intuition in tactical planning, and the ability to find opportunity in chaotic situations where other species saw only disaster. These characteristics had allowed human forces to achieve victories that conventional military analysis said were impossible. Daeyun presented her own intelligence analysis, showing that human military doctrine had evolved through necessity during conflicts where Earth forces were consistently outnumbered and outgunned by enemies with superior technology. This had forced the development of tactical approaches that maximized creativity and adaptability rather than relying on technological advantages. The Academy Council made a decision that would reshape military education across the galaxy when they voted to establish the Human Combat Doctrine Institute as a new department within the Academy, where alien military officers could study human approaches to tactical thinking and crisis management. Taemin and his squad were offered positions as tactical consultants to the Galactic Defense Force with ranks equivalent to senior strategic advisors, but they surprised everyone by declining these prestigious appointments and instead choosing to become instructors at the new institute where they could teach alien officers how to think like humans in impossible situations. The first class of alien students at the Human Combat Doctrine Institute consisted of experienced military officers from 6 different species who had volunteered to learn tactical approaches that violated everything they had been taught about proper military procedure. Their initial simulation exercises were designed to recreate the pressure and chaos that human forces had faced during their conflicts. Commander Zixpara, who had previously been amazed by Hyri's impossible flying techniques, became one of the first alien officers to successfully complete a human-style simulation, when she learned to use debris and obstacles as tactical advantages rather than barriers to be avoided. Captain Velkaran from the Andromedas Defense Force achieved a breakthrough when he stopped trying to find logical solutions to tactical problems and instead began trusting emotional instincts that his training had taught him to ignore. His success in defending a simulated colony using improvised weapons and unconventional maneuvers earned him recognition as the first non-human officer to demonstrate human-style tactical thinking. The new institute faced significant resistance from traditional military establishments who argued that human approaches to warfare were too chaotic and unpredictable to be taught as formal military doctrine. Several senior officers resigned rather than accept that primitive beings could contribute anything valuable to galactic military science. But the resistance faded as reports continued to arrive, showing remarkable success rates when human tactical innovations were implemented by conventional military units. The siege of Fortress Omega-9 had been broken using Chan Wu's electromagnetic pulse technique, and the defense of the Trade Route Nebula had succeeded through application of Du Hyun's multidimensional flanking strategy. The Academy's central computer, Area 7, was reprogrammed to generate training scenarios that combined elements of human tactical thinking with conventional military doctrine. These hybrid simulations challenged students to find creative solutions while maintaining discipline and coordination. Alien cadets who had previously struggled with basic tactical exercises began achieving remarkable results when they learned to approach problems with human-style adaptability. The rigid thinking patterns that had limited their tactical options were replaced by flexible approaches that emphasized opportunity recognition over strict adherence to established procedures. The transformation extended beyond the Academy as military forces across the galaxy began requesting human tactical advisors and implementing training programs based on human combat doctrine. Several planetary defense forces reported dramatic improvements in their effectiveness after adopting human approaches to crisis management and improvised strategy. Taemin found himself teaching advanced tactical theory to alien officers who had decades more experience than he did, but who had never learned to see battlefield chaos as an opportunity rather than a problem to be controlled. His classes focused on helping students develop the intuitive thinking that allowed humans to find solutions that logic alone could not discover. Hyri's flight training program became legendary for producing pilots who could perform maneuvers that had previously been considered impossible. Her students learned to use environmental factors like gravity fields and atmospheric conditions as tools rather than obstacles. Du Hyun developed strategic planning courses that taught alien officers how to coordinate complex operations while maintaining the flexibility to adapt when situations changed unexpectedly. His approach emphasized emotional understanding of troop morale and enemy psychology, rather than relying solely on mathematical analysis. Chan Wu's engineering seminars focused on teaching alien technical officers how to improvise solutions using available materials rather than waiting for proper equipment. His students learned to see every broken system as a potential component for something new. Dae-Yoon established intelligence analysis programs that taught alien analysts how to recognize patterns in seemingly random data by combining logical analysis with intuitive leaps that conventional training discouraged. The success of the Human Combat Doctrine Institute led to the establishment of similar programs at military academies across the galaxy as species that had previously dismissed human capabilities began requesting access to tactical training that could provide advantages in future conflicts. The long-term implications became clear when the first generation of alien officers trained in human tactical doctrine achieved promotion to senior command positions and began implementing hybrid strategies that combined the best elements of traditional military science with human innovation. The Galactic Defense Council officially recognized human tactical doctrine as an essential component of modern military education and requested that Earth establish additional training facilities to meet growing demand from species across the galaxy. 3 years after the revelation that had changed everything, Tai-Min stood in the observation deck of the Academy watching new classes of alien cadets struggle through their first human-style simulations, where they had to defend a space station with failing systems, limited ammunition, and no backup support. The aliens were learning what humanity had always known through necessity, that sometimes the best solutions came not from superior technology or ancient wisdom, but from the stubborn refusal to accept that any situation was truly impossible. Administrator Kixmoth joined Tai-Min at the observation window and watched as a young Valorian cadet successfully completed an impossible scenario by using the station's waste recycling system as an improvised communications array. The solution was completely insane by conventional standards, but it worked perfectly. Your species has taught us something important about the nature of intelligence and tactical thinking, Kixmoth said, as his tentacles curled in what humans had learned was an expression of deep thought. We are not more intelligent than other species, but we think about problems differently because we had to learn how to win when we should have lost. The Academy's official records were updated that day to reflect the new reality, where human cadets had once been listed as remedial tactical training, basic level. The new designation read Advanced Human Combat Doctrine, instructor-level classification. The change represented more than administrative correction because it acknowledged that military excellence could emerge from any species and any background when individuals were forced to find solutions that conventional wisdom said were impossible.